Hello and welcome to PGurus Primetime. I am your host Sri Iyer. I am with the one and only Abhijit Iyer. Call me God Mitra. I have written to God. I haven't heard back from him yet, so I will start calling you once I hear back. Abhijit, welcome to PGurus channel. We missed you last week. Hope you are feeling better today.
Much better. Vetri Vail. All thanks to Paramasivan. I am doing very, very well. Thank you.
What is this? You are saying well, Vetrivel, and then you are saying thanks to Paramasivan. What did
I pray to
Skanda do?
several gods. I pray to several
Very
gods. What's wrong
secular.
with that?
Very secular. Very
Why
secular.
are you behaving? Why are you behaving like a Christian? Why are you behaving like a monotheist?
No. I'm just trying to put you on the spot because if I can get you
No.
riled up.
I'm going to complain to my mother that you've turned monotheist on me.
All right. So, Abhijit, we're going to jump straight into questions. And I
Yes.
am pulling up the list of questions here. Just give me 1 second. Um, Hang on. First question is from Virendra Patil. I don't know if you can read it. It actually appears on the bottom of your screen in case you have
Yes.
difficulty understand. Ask Abhijit, what did you think of Kingdom Ashin of North episode?
Super. So Kingdom is my favorite series of all time. The first episode, and I was like, holy crap. And I was just completely hooked onto it. And I really loved it. So, it's a prequel. That's fine. My only complaint with the entire Kingdom series has been that they only, do 9 or 12 episodes or something like that. No? They don't do more than that. They need to have like 20, 30 episodes per series.
Well, we all can wish, can't we? By the way, I don't know if you've
Yes.
seen this show called Startup in Netflix.
No.
It's all about startups, cryptocurrencies, and how venture capitalists have a belief that they don't follow any rules, and also the Russian mafia connection. It's very interesting. Anyway, let's go on to the next question. Virendra Patil again. He wants to know: did your parents oppose you to go to Australia after your undergraduate? What did you do to convince them, and what was your life like in Australia?
No, they were very happy. They're like, please go, go, go. And I was also like, yay, good riddance, good riddance, good riddance. So it was all up, it was excellent. And my life in Australia was also extremely good. Remember, the quality of life in Australia is far, far superior to India. You don't need a sifarish or recommendation to get in anywhere, do anything. Life is just easy out there. The big complaint I had was having to clean my own house and things like that, which, in small town Australia is a bit tough finding help. But once I shifted to Melbourne, I hired this wonderful housekeeper to help me. She used to come in twice a week and do everything. And cooking, of course, I love, so I don't leave cooking to anybody else. But look, everything's easy, right? There's not that much dust. You don't get that kind of dust. Every house complex has a swimming pool. Every, you just walk into the hospital, your Medicare is all covered, so everything is great. You don't pay anything for the doctor. Life is just easy out there. So it was a very, very good life.
So, viewers, couple of things. Today, our transmission is coming at 1080p. We have also added Twitter Spaces. Those of you who are driving can listen to us on Twitter Spaces. And whatever question you ask will actually appear when that question is being asked. And it is now recorded for posterity. Your name will be there. So congratulations on that. The next question is from Ioni Protocol. Abhijit, horse battle chariots found in Sinoli are 4,000 years old. And if we take Mahabharata, the number of horses to be 20 times exaggerated, then also the actual number is very significant. What happened? Was there any extinction?
I really don't know what context he's asking me, but look, horses were the preserve of the nobility, right? They always have been. Ordinary people can't afford horses. And in the Bronze Age, horse chariots were kind of in their own zone. They were the modern technology of their time. I doubt very much that if you can even extrapolate even 20 times. See, there is a method called rhetorical exaggeration. That when you want to show size, you probably don't say 20. Even if you say, how are you coming at exaggerated 20 times? Right? So
Right.
it might have been far, far less. If you're looking at a early Bronze Age time period for Mahabharata, which kind of goes with a 1800 BC period.
No, Mahabharata
Then
is
you're
3000
looking,
BCE.
well,
3100
I
BCE.
mean, he's saying if this is the Mahabharata, right? So I don't care where the Mahabharata actually is. If you're putting it in this particular period, 1800 BC, then you're looking at a army of no more than about 6,000 to 7,000 people per side, with about 300 to 400 horses per side, maximum 500 horses per side, maximum, right? And that, given the number of rotations you need for horses, would have left you with about, say, 100, 150 chariots at most. The much larger battles you see, they come towards the end of the Bronze Age. But basically, Sinoli, what we've seen, based on either the wealth or the material culture, it is simply not in the same league of a late Bronze Age culture which can support several hundreds of chariots. So
And
if you're saying that Mahabharata was if you're saying Mahabharata was 5000 BC, then you probably wouldn't have had more than 40, 50 chariots at best.
yes, indeed. And Abhijit, if I could request,
and see the other, and of course the other issue is that the oldest wheel found is from about 5000 BC. So it would have also been an
right.
extremely more like a wagon than a chariot.
I suppose this is going to be difficult for you because I'm sending you a speaker invite on. I'm sending you a speaker invite on your cell phone. I guess it is going to be difficult, isn't it? Let it go. So next question. Never mind. Let it go. Don't disturb it. Let it go.
Okay.
Kapil Gund wants to know, is India buying more Rafales? How will they help against the J-20 and S-500 air defense system? Is Su-75 program risky because it will stall without customers?
Okay, because there's three things. Just keep this question on screen so that I can read.
No, it'll be there.
So I've heard unconfirmed reports they're buying more. If we are, there's pros and cons to everything. I generally oppose these piecemeal things where you buy 36 and then you buy another 36, because then you could have got a bloody technology transfer package which you didn't. Okay, so you've wasted a heck of a lot of money and time doing crap. That said, the Rafale is a great plane, and it's generally Rafale against J-20. I'll bet on the Rafale every day, every single day. S-500 not so much. Okay, because the S-500 is an extremely dangerous system. We don't know if the French have countermeasures for it. They would have picked up some countermeasures against the S-400 based on their operations in Iraq. They would have picked up on Syria, not Iraq. They would have picked up electronic signatures and worked in countermeasures and things like that. S-500, I'm not so sure. Su-57 is not risky at all technically for the Russians. They desperately need a single-engine fighter. There's a huge single-engine fighter market for it in Russia alone. Vietnam needs access to a stealth aircraft. Countries like Algeria and Egypt that would want access to a stealth aircraft. There are countries, former client states, or even countries that buy Chinese equipment that would want access to a stealth aircraft. Remember, none of China's stealth aircraft has been opened up for export, whereas this one has been announced as being for export from day one. So you will see large purchases from Algeria, from Vietnam. Ultimately, I suspect even India will end up buying it.
One question for you before we go on to the next question, Abhijit. So these are all, one side does one thing, the other side counters it. So you had radar, stealth aircraft were supposed to be able to defeat the radar. What is the radar technology, guys? What are they doing? How are they defeating the stealth mode?
They're not doing radar, they're doing optical. So if you look at the
Okay.
F-35, there's something called the distributive aperture system, the DAS. And what it does is it's basically a 360-degree infrared optical synthetic system. If you look at, I think I tweeted out that video. An F-35 flying somewhere over Virginia, which is in Washington, D.C., was able to pick up a Falcon 9 rocket launch from Florida, 1,900 kilometers away. Now remember, Falcon 9 rocket is very, very big. That said, one thing no aircraft can hide is its infrared signature, because you have that huge hot jet stream coming out of your ass. Every fighter has it. There's no way you can hide it. You can minimize it, but you can't hide it. And if this one can pick up a rocket launch from 1,900 kilometers away, very clearly pick up a rocket launch 1,900 kilometers away, then it can pick up smaller engine thrust from much, much, much greater distances than previously possible. Today, if you look at any of the Russian aircraft or the European aircraft, they've got this round, small thing in front of the cockpit canopy. That is your infrared track and search. The Russians came up with it because their radars weren't that good, so they required optical tracking. Even those can track a target out to about 90 to 100 kilometers. This one will probably track even a stealth fighter or a stealth bomber even, because you just can't hide your infrared signature. They'll be able to track it out to about, 180, 200 kilometers minimum.
Is there a way you can up your volume a little bit, Abhijit?
Not that nope. Sorry.
Okay. Guys, you have to up the volume yourself. He is at the maximum right now. And also, viewers, since your questions are appearing on the screen, could you please make them without any typographical, grammatical errors? Remember, if you are trying to impress your significant other, that person is going to read this thing. So you want to put your best foot forward. Sajid Kumar wants to know, you said Pak aims to exploit minerals in Afghanistan. Can you please predict if they can even get 100 billion with China from Afghanistan in the next 10 years? Thanks.
US said Pak aims to exploit minerals in Afghanistan. Look, they can get the minerals if they manage to stabilize the situation. I doubt very much that they're going to stabilize the situation. All right, because the government in Kabul isn't backing down. You can only invest in large-scale mining to extract those things if you are able to stabilize. It is not going to be stable.
So just to follow up on this, now what I'm hearing is America is keeping its options open. They are actually firing drones from either UAE or perhaps somewhere close to Pakistan. I don't know where. And they are attacking some of the Taliban bases. Was this a strategy that America had already decided that that's what they will do when they were vacating? Your thoughts?
They're actually flying full-blown bombers and fighters. They're flying B-52. I've seen a picture of a B-52 bomber flying over Afghanistan, attacking the Taliban. It was always going to be the strategy. Remember, even Bagram Air Base ultimately came down to, for the last 3-4 years, it was the Afghans doing all the fighting outside. The Americans were only flying out of Bagram Air Base. So they just relocated their air base. They haven't done anything else. And Bagram, if you fly over it, I flew over it. I flew on the side of it. You're not allowed to overfly it. It is massive. It is like its own country, almost the size of its own country, So fine, they've lost the proximity, but they've gained critical supply lines so that Pakistan can't interfere with it. They have free reign of Pakistani airspace. They come in, they bomb, they go out. It's expensive in a different way. because fuel costs of coming over and then bombing in Afghanistan will be more. On the other hand, it's cheaper in that you don't fear for your the lives of pilots and soldiers that you've deployed at Bagram and things like that. So it's a cost benefit analysis.
Someone saying that I am too loud, so I'm trying to reduce my volume. I just did that. I hope you find it comfortable now. You are able to hear me fine, right, Abhijit?
I can hear you fine. I increased
Okay,
my
great.
volume. I found the way to do it. Can you hear me better
Okay.
now?
Okay. I'm able to hear you fine. You see, the thing is, what you and I hear and what StreamYard is putting out is slightly different, but that's okay. Right now, guys, can you just confirm that everything is okay now? Next question. Ioni Protocol wants to know, please shed light on anti-drone systems based on hard kill and soft kill developed in India and abroad.
Shed light in what way?
I suppose we had these drones landing,
Okay.
right?
See, so here's the thing. You have these quadcopter drones which the Pakistanis used to attack our airbase. They're quite easy
That's the
to
one
kill.
that came
You
in
kill
Three
them with,
Idiots, quadcopters.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that. So what happens is you can use that to kill. You just use electronic measures. You can zap it, zoom it, and things like that. Or you talk to the companies involved. They'll geofence certain areas. So Parrot or DJI, they will ensure that if you give them the locations, no drone will be able to fly in there, no matter what you do with it. But then the downside is you're giving foreign companies areas which you're saying are sensitive. You're literally giving them classified data, right? So I don't think the Indian government will do that, number one. So you have two options here. One is some kind of CRAM device that flows in rapid action this thing shoot it down. The problem is if drones fly that low, at like 70, 80 feet, if you have a multi-story building behind it, in the background, in addition to trying to shoot the drone down, you'd probably end up killing lots of your own citizens if you had a high-rise building in the back or something like that. So it's very tough. The second problem is just detecting it, because detecting it is highly problematic. It's very silent. It's flying very low. You have to buy very expensive planes to detect it and things like that. So the second option is the third option technically is a laser, right? The thing about lasers is they are actually quite good at shooting certain drones, especially civilian drones, down, because what will happen is they pick up on CCD devices. CCD charge coupled devices. They can be a CCD can be detected. This has existed even in civilian technology. Once upon a time, we used to see lots of photos from Saint-Tropez and the French Riviera of Diana topless, or this one topless, or that one topless on their mega yachts out in the Bay of Biscay and like that. Today, you don't see any of these private photos anymore. Do you know why? Because all rich people have these anti-CCD devices installed. It picks up, even from about 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, it can pick up a camera being pointed at it, and it dazzles you. So it takes sunlight or some kind of very powerful light and flashes you. Like how we used to do in school to disrupt our teachers or other people's teachers. You take a mirror and then flash the sunlight onto their face, kind of thing, so it disorients. They do things like that. And in this case, the laser can be used for it. You detect a CCD coming in, and you aim a laser at it. You permanently damage it. So there's all kinds of things you can do. The issue is, are you willing to spend the money? Do you have a holistic project for it? Or are you going to give it to DRDO, which will always say we already have it, which won't function, and then you will spend another 10 years developing it. By that time, they would have gone on to the next technology.
Interesting. Next question. Was the end of Hinduism a wake-up call or a fate of our destiny?
It's your fate. You're destined to go extinct. There's nothing anymore that can save you.
Next question from YSK Chaitanya. Abhijit, after reading Mihir Sharma, Reset the State of Affairs, is dire. Would you advise moving out of India for a 25-year-old?
Yes, please don't stay in India. Get the hell out if you can. Go to the UAE. Worst case scenario, go to the UAE, because even the UAE will do better than we will.
Mr. Lee has a question. Given Ian Morris's hypothesis on energy consumption being the foundation of modern economies, should India subsume rights to food, education, internet, etc., with a right to energy?
Mm, well, what do you subsume?
Consume opposite, I think. Subsume. Subsume is inside. Take it inside.
No. Why should it be subsumed? There should be a right to energy, period. But no government is going to enact it. Because the right to energy would also imply the right to unlimited energy. Because the right to food implies you can eat food. You can waste food if you want, which mostly gets wasted at weddings and crap like that. Right to education, right to internet. The problem is that you enact right to energy. What if each guy wants a nuclear power generator in his backyard, or wants the energy equivalent to a nuclear power plant? So there's you can't have a well. I mean, you can have you can set a margin, but then is the government actually going to do that? And then the $60 billion worth of theft that happens every year, enough to build 4 reactors every year. Even that will end up getting justified, saying, well, if they can't pay for it, you still have a right to energy. Therefore, it has to be given. It has to be rationed out.
Okay, next question. Harshit Patel. Does Harry Potter series have a lot of Christian references like resurrection and the goblins who worked at Gringotts represent the Jewish stereotype?
I'm very curious about that, because goblins generally had a very greedy reputation. I think it has a lot more to do with Norse mythology, and just like the Hobbit and things like that. But generally, even if you look at the Norse, before they came in contact with Jews, goblins and dwarves were generally meant to be extremely greedy creatures.
Next
And
question.
no, I don't find too many Christian references there.
Next question again from Harshit Patel. Why, even though Punjab is so feudal, but is still culturally very dominant?
Look, feudal societies tend to be culturally extremely dominant, because the more feudal you are, the more resource allocation the higher segments of society have, and they are able to create culture. Culture is a product of very rich people having lots of money. That is how culture is created. So, in fact, it is a feudal society that will create maximum culture. Even today, you look at it, in America, the wealth disparity is huge. And it is precisely that wealth disparity that creates the kind of dominance that America has.
Okay, next question from Chaitanya Naidu. Is an unstable Afghanistan in India's national interest? If yes, then why invest $3 billion in that country?
A stable Afghanistan under a friendly government to us is choice number one. If there isn't a government friendly to us, then an unstable Afghanistan is choice number two. And why we invest $3 billion or whatever billion dollars there is because all our projects are meant to help the Afghan people. They are not meant to help the Afghan government in any way. They've all been low-level agricultural projects or water projects and things like that, which have brought local community benefits. And that is a very important investment because the goodwill lasts well beyond government.
Exactly. And India has never shown themselves as an occupier in its thousands of years of history. So that should, people know that in India.
That's not technically true, because the Sikhs went and slaughtered a lot of people. The Sikh empires went and slaughtered a lot of people in Afghanistan. The Mauryas went and slaughtered a lot of people in Afghanistan. The Guptas went and slaughtered a lot of people in Afghanistan. Generally gone and slaughtered a lot of Afghans. I suspect we have killed a lot more Afghans over the last 2,000 years than Afghans have killed us. So, this nonsense about India being peaceful and turning the other cheek, it's just a concoction. It's not true.
Next question from Mr. Lee. The petrol and diesel sold at the pump in India in 2021 is of a higher quality than that was sold in 2013, emissions-wise. Then why are Indians protesting against higher prices?
It isn't compared to 2013. They're protesting compared to 2017, 2018, and things like that, when unleaded was banned and things like that, right? So the 2013 comparison isn't fair. Generally, price rises will always be met by protest. It's that simple.
Next question, Chaitanya YSK again. Should I do an MA in strategic affairs to enter a think tank? Organizer Research Foundation, I think, ORF, asks for it. I am an engineer. How to move forward?
Okay, so it's really simple. You don't have to do a MA in strategic affairs.
We seem to be having a little bit of a technical difficulty. We'll wait for him to rejoin. We can't hear you, Abhijit. Okay, he'll be rejoining us shortly. So just stay tuned. The question is still up there on the display. It's coming up. He's back. Hi, Abhijit. Can you answer that question?
Yeah. ORF does not require all of that. You either have to have the multiple pathways. You need to have either work experience, or if you're planning on jumping fees from something else, then start writing. Start writing, get a public writing record, and then jump. And if you're joining even without that public writing record and you want to switch careers, then write a fantastic statement of purpose, and they'll give you a 3-month trial period, after which you can join.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. And viewers, thanks for being patient. Raghavendra wants to know, what is your take on the Hunik, Hunic, invasions of India, Hunik, I guess, Hun. How does it compare to its effect on Rome? How do you think it changed India?
It's basically happening round about slightly earlier or around the same time that Rome is getting invaded. Within about 40, 50 years for sure. The thing is, in Rome, it was particularly, it was more psychological than it was an actual impact on Rome, because remember, by this point of time, a lot of so-called barbarians already come in, right? They'd come into, they had come into the Italian peninsula and ravaged the countryside and things like that. So it wasn't a very big deal for a new set of barbarians to be coming in. It was the same in India. You had several invasions from these areas. And remember, most of what we know about the Huns is atrocity literature, is Buddhist atrocity literature, because apparently Tomana and Mihira Kula were both great Shiva Bhaktas.
Abhijit, if you don't mind, can you try upping your volume one more time? When you rejoined, I think it came back in at a lower value.
Okay.
Volume.
Okay, is it good now?
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Hardik Cheda wants to know.
Just going to get myself some, just 1 minute. I'm just going to get myself some water.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Abhijit is getting himself some water, and he is back. Abhijit, the next, are you ready? Coke,
Yes.
Coca-Cola. Hardik Cheda wants to know, you have said that the minority governments of Atal Bihari Vajpayee and PV Narasimha Rao have done more than all the majority governments. Can you discuss why? Do you think it is because more parties are part of minority government, hence less opposition?
It's not just less opposition. It was also a case that there were checks and balances on those governments, and they didn't have a free rein to enact their own stupidity. Okay, the problem with the dictatorship is it's great when your dictator is amazing like Lee Kuan Yew. If your dictator is a moron like Ziaul Haq, you go down the drain. Now the problem is we are not a dictatorship, but a absolute majority government has a certain autonomy to do things that coalition partners never impose on it. So the head of a absolute majority government in that sense is always more likely to reflect his or her own clumsiness and incompetence onto all policies of the government. Remember, the Congress for the longest period of time had the worst policies when it had absolute majority. Congress policies only improved when it started becoming a minority government. Okay, PV Narasimha Rao did not have a majority. Uh, uh, some of the good things that Manmohan Singh did were done when he did not have an absolute majority of the Congress alone. Uh, Technically, if you look at it, India has only grown when there have been coalition governments. The checks and balances actually improve policy making, contrary to popular belief. India has grown more under coalition governments than it has grown under absolute majority governments. And here you're just seeing the incompetence of the man at the top reflect through uh, poorly thought out policies.
Next question from Piku. I have seen tremendous goodwill for people of India in Central Asia. How can we leverage that, or can we?
Really? Where? Where have you seen this goodwill?
Piku, can you just answer back? We will put up that answer when you have your answer ready. Next question, please.
Because one second, because see, I've been to Turkmenistan. They don't even know what an Indian is. Most of them. Okay. In Kazakhstan, like, oh, I mean, okay, fancy dress. What do you want us to do? They don't give a rat's about India. The only place is you'll find small little pockets in Uzbekistan and in Kyrgyzstan best. Tajikistan, they don't give a damn about you. So I really don't know where you're seeing this great wellspring of goodwill.
How about Uzbekistan? How about Uzbekistan?
So that's what I said. In Uzbekistan, there's small pockets.
I see. I read the Restart book of Mihir Sharma, and the state of affairs is rather dire. Is it better for the youth to move out of India? Chaitanya YSK.
I think this question was always brought up, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. We're skipping to the next question. Apologies. Ikhtanak Sharma, with so much legalization of psychotropic substances happening globally, when do you expect Indian society and politics to catch up? Wasn't the ancient ritual drink soma our own derivative of DMT?
I don't know what soma was. Nobody really knows because we don't have a sample of what it was. Okay. We can just guess. It could have been a mushroom, it could have been weed, it could have been literally anything. It could have been hash, I don't know. Heck, for all you know, it could have even been crystal meth. But look, there's a very different dynamic to having psychotropic substances in rich countries that can afford the fallout as opposed to having it in poorer countries. Okay, you see this, the opium addiction that was created in China and India poverty would lead people to buy opium, so mothers, just to keep their children quiet in India, used to rub their nipples with opium and breastfeed their children to feed their children opium just so that they would go to sleep and stay quiet. Okay, so in poverty, the dynamics of legalizing these substances is very, very different than in wealth. Okay, once upon a time, it wasn't grown on industrial scale, it wasn't available to order, and had a completely different trajectory where only the sadhus and maharishis who were up in the hills would have access to these things out in the forests. If you got it in the cities, it was extremely rare because there was no industrial scale production. Today, there is industrial scale production. So these are all things you have to do. Please don't do this cut, copy, paste because the West does it. The West earns a heck of a lot more than you do. You are not the West. You don't have the luxuries of the West.
Next question from Pranav Naresh. Why?
Unless, of course, you want to kill off most of your population, in which case you can make drugs free and available on the road. Everybody becomes a heroin or opium or crystal meth addict. They all suicide and die, mass suicide, dying 300-400 million people die over a period of 10 years. And, you can solve all your resource crunch problems.
Pranav Naresh wants to know, why didn't Sri Lanka ever have an empire in India? Why was Burma such a strong empire? And why did Southeast Asian empires have such a martial culture?
Okay, so Sri Lanka, if you look at it, it's a tiny, tiny country. Okay, in order to be able to come and take on a continental empire, you need to have massive resources, A, or B, like England, you need to have a significant military advantage. The problem with Sri Lanka was it never acquired that significant military advantage. In the English case, you had the longbow, the Welsh longbow, which then allowed it, to win the Battle of Crecy, win the Battle of Agincourt, and things like that. Here, you never had that. The pace of warfare in Sri Lanka kept in step with warfare in India. In fact, it was mostly transmitted to it from India. There was no possibility of localized innovation. So net results, much smaller economy, much smaller arable land, you're not going to end up having an empire. Burma was such a strong empire because its agricultural base was enormous. It was enormous. Even now, see, Burma, people think it's because of water. It is not because of water. It is because of the absolutely rich minerals and things that come in from the upper riparian areas, from Tibet and things like that into Burma, that make it such extraordinarily fertile soil. So across there, you will see big empires: Thailand, Burma, the Tonle Sap Lake in Siem Reap, the Khmer Empire. They were all built on the basis of these extremely powerful, very uniquely irrigated plots of land, where you had large arable plots of land and forests all around. So protection as well as agriculture, and massive amounts of water coming in, but most importantly, massive amounts of nutrients coming in. Because remember, waters as a rule will wash away nutrients, like floods do. They erode topsoil. So one year when you have floods, the next year you will probably have drought or famine because it's washed away the topsoil kind of thing. That's not what happens here. It's more like a Nile system where the flooding keeps depositing new alluvial soil and things like that. It is a very unique combination that led to extremely high productivity. And because there were so many rivers, see, Egypt is just the Nile. Here you have Mekong, you have so many rivers coming down south from there. So you had several empires come up, and it was a question of playing catch up to each other in terms of military, which is why the Burmese built a very strong empire, just as Khmer did. All these Southeast Asian empires were extremely powerful empires. And why they have a martial culture? Well, everybody had a martial culture. India also had a martial culture once upon a time. Okay, that martial culture seems to dissipate mostly when this whole endogamy thing sets in. Sometime around 500 AD, you see endogamy sets in, caste sets in, and what it does is instead of creating economies of scale, you end up divvying things up. But the exact demarshalling of Indian culture, we don't know why it happened. The economics was weak, but the demarshalling of Indian culture, we don't know why it happened. In fact, the Oriyas remained martial for a very, very long point of time. Okay, extremely martial. Most of the Indian dynasties remained extremely martial. Uh, there's really no clear-cut way of determining when they stopped being martial cultures.
Next question from Aditya. What is the source of Indian government culture of blanket banning rather than regulating stuff like crypto? Is it to avoid headache or laziness?
It's to avoid accountability. Remember, crypto by itself is a far more high fidelity currency than your government ability to be propagate and print currency as and when it wants, right? And there are many checks and balances to seeing that crypto remains a high fidelity currency. Nobody at some point of time can decide to print 500,000 new $100 notes and debase the value of the currency. That can't happen in crypto, which is something the government fears. The second thing you will remember is in India, the biggest loan defaulter is probably the Indian government. They don't pay people for contracts that have been contracted out. You look at most infrastructure and power companies in India, they keep doing a lot of work which never gets paid back, and they go into arbitration like this, retrospective tax because of care and all of that. You're just hearing about. But this non-payment, we've defaulted, we've refused to pay the last 7 arbitrations. Imagine how many more arbitrations are happening internally where the government just doesn't want to pay. Why? Because the Babu in charge doesn't want to pay. So what happens with Bitcoin, with cryptocurrency plus smart contracts is, it is not the government that decides when the payment has to go through. You set certain fixed criteria, you find 3, 4, 5 independent, I forget the exact term for them, but they are validators of contract
specialists. Yeah.
And once they say it's done, it's automatically transferred. So the government then will lose its power. So it's your typical stupid, dumb bureaucrats who want to control power. So it's not stupidity; it's actually genuine, deliberate malice. It's a government that wants to retain poor fiscal policies and babus that don't want to give the power to extract bribes from people saying, oh, no, you have to give me 500 crores and fund my son's education in America. Tell me, 98% of babu's kids are in America studying on scholarship. Are you willing to accept that they represent such an extraordinary level of intelligence that 98% of their kids all got scholarships in America? Of course not. They're taking bribes left, right, and center. This is one of the means of extorting all these companies to do that. I will clear your thing, you pay me this. And then, because it's a chain, I will clear this, but then the 10 bureaucrats below me, each of them will demand their own share. So it is actually a fantastic anti-corruption tool, and it is a sign of a corrupt government to not want to give, to be fair. It is a sign of a corrupt Babu to not want to give that power away, his money getting power and his send my son off to Yale or Princeton card away. And it is a sign of an extraordinarily dumb political executive that they can't sniff this from a mile away. But then, given the education levels you have in this cabinet, this is what you're going to get.
One request to our viewers: don't put 3 questions in one blog, because it is very difficult for Abhijit to remember what were the questions asked. Please keep it to one question.
No. Now because it's flashing, it's fine.
You're able to read?
It's flash, so
Okay,
it's fine.
I
So
just
we
want to
can
make
see it.
sure. I just want to make
Can you
sure.
explain in short? Can you explain in short as China
Can I read it for you?
control the river sources? Please.
Can you explain in short what are the problems as China controls the river sources of Southeast Asia? And do you think it is Mao's brilliance on capturing Tibet?
So I don't think Mao actually thought this entire water plan through. It was more about land, land, land. It later became something that they realized that they could weaponize, but they do not weaponize it. Galwan broke out over the blockage of a river, so us losing 20 soldiers in Galwan was technically us showing them, you block waters, you bastard, I'm going to come and I'm going to kill your troops, even if my own troops die. Because you look at the satellite imagery of Galwan from Bor, tweeted it out, it will show you that there was a clear water blockage. Okay, which was demolished within 24 hours of the Galwan clashes happening. We didn't do it. I suspect the Chinese did it because they got the fright of their lives that India was willing to risk violence for water. But that's pretty much, Galwan did a huge favor to everybody down the line. Because China gave a commitment that it will not divert the waters. It will only build, because they don't have water in any of the downstream with the lower riparian countries. So their thing was, and see, they're also caught in a bit of a thing. Laos is their great ally, so they can't block waters to Laos. If they block waters to, say, India, what happens if India then blocks it to Pakistan? That's your other great ally gone out of the picture. If India blocks waters to Bangladesh, then what happens? So there were lots of considerations that went into China's thing. So Mao, it wasn't the brilliance of Mao or anything. So there have been constraints. China has tried to challenge the status quo, and India's violent response to it has kind of made them think again about that.
Next question from Pranav Naresh. Despite huge trade and coastline, other than Choras, why didn't India have strong naval empires?
Mostly because you didn't have a projection of culture happening externally, except during the Choras and possibly during the Harappan period. Remember the dockyards at, is it Lothal? I think it's the Lothal dockyard. Is the biggest ever discovered from that point of time. A 1,000-foot dockyard at that point of time is no joke. So clearly there was something happening out there which we don't know about simply because we haven't deciphered that script. The Choras were at a point of time they were actually projecting Indian culture out. The problem with India was that India up to that point was so rich. We used to come here, we didn't feel the need to go out. Whatever you needed was available here. People who voyage far are people who lack certain things and need certain things from elsewhere. So you had, for example, a lot of Indian navigators that helped the Portuguese and things like that. This comes at a much later stage after the Muslim conquest of India. And you had the Cholas who were extremely expansionist, who, it was a war brought on by trade. In fact, the Chora Sri Vijaya expedition was exactly like America's conquest of Hawaii. It was American businessmen who urged the American government to take over Hawaii. It was the Chora businessmen who urged their government to take over Sri Vijaya in alliance with the Khmer Empire. Right? So it had a lot to do with trading and the willingness to go abroad and the need to go abroad.
Hey, when was the compass discovered? Navigational compass?
Sometime during the only in the last 1,000 years, maybe 500-600 years back.
Okay, because at the time of the Chora period, what they had was a monkey. They call them today Devang. That's a Tamil word. What actually it means is Deva Vak. And the reason it is called Deva Vak is this tiny specimen of a monkey would always sit facing north. So you took them in your ship. So you
So
knew.
so if you're looking at a modern compass that shows you different directions, that was mostly a modern invention. But I think the earliest one was something Chinese from about 200 AD or something like that. So, but that isn't what you'd consider a modern day compass. It didn't have degrees, angles, and cardinal points marked
Yeah,
out. I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
think.
yeah.
See, when you say compass, it has to be a complete navigation tool.
Well, okay. So
What
here
they
is
had
how
in
I
those days was north marker.
right, right. What I, what I have read about the Chora kingdom conquest and things like that is they could only travel when the winds blew in a certain direction. And then once they were done, they had to wait for the winds to turn around for them to come back. It's sort of like looking at the winds to kind of take them to different places.
Kind of, not entirely. If you do sailing today, you'll realize you can actually sail against the wind in certain circumstances and things. You use oblique angles to channel the wind. You can't sail against the wind, but you can definitely channel it in certain ways and use certain currents to, if even if you don't go straight, you can make an oblique return back and things like that.
Next question, please. Krishna Aital wants to know, Sharanu Iyer-Mitra, if the Japanese had not attacked the US in the Second World War and had instead attacked USSR when Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, would the outcome of the Second World War would have been different?
I don't do all these kind of histories. I've said this before several times. This is not a video game. Okay, I don't do. I suggest you go do Mythic Quest or Myst or one of those games, or role playing games. I don't do role playing games, so you're asking the wrong person.
Neha Nagpal wants to know, what is your opinion on one, rights of indigenous people over ancestral land under Forest Rights Act 2006, and two, the incompletion of land reforms post independence, which created dissent in some sections?
So I don't know about the Ancestral Land and Forest Rights Act, but it is definitely if there are tribes there, their sanctity has to be respected. It was never respected in the Northeast, so you allowed missionaries to go in there and do all of that. You technically shouldn't be allowing any of that crap to be happening. Technically, missionaries simply shouldn't be in the Andamans. You still allow them to go there. So, like all things added up, this is one of the most spectacularly incompetent governments. Maybe it's not, but it's just because of the information age, their incompetence tends to get magnified. As for the incompletion of land reforms, see, we didn't have land reforms. We had tenancy reforms. Tenancy reforms are not the same as land reforms. Okay, number one. Number two, what happened was solved nothing because the fragmentation of land continued. See, distribution of certain tilling rights and things like that does not constitute land reform. Today, you have a thing where most of your crops that are grown by small farmers get wasted. They can't get sold. Your rot in process and things like that is so massive. On the other hand, you have examples of collectivization that have failed, like in the Soviet Union, or succeeded, like they have in Israel. Probably the Israel cooperative thing should have been the thing to have been done. But then again, you also divided things into industrial land, agricultural land, rural land, this, that, and all that nonsense. It was all based on the simple need to categorize as opposed to any scientific categories for categorization. Right? So it needs a full-on ab initio approach to what is happening. It ties in. When you say land reform, it is not just the ownership and tenancy reforms we're talking about. It's a whole set of things, including saying that land can't be fractionalized beyond this point, or if a corporate entity wants to take over, they pay you as much income as is due to your plot of land, but it is going to be tilled by a corporate entity that gets 100 acres of land to till, things like that. There are several things that you can do that will simply not be done.
Next question, please. Vaibhav Chaudhary wants to know your thoughts on Fauci gain of function research and Wuhan funding.
I've already given this several times on this show. I suggest you look at previous episodes. But to sum it up, Fauci is an A-grade crook. He's a liar and a fraud. He should have been thrown out of his job by Trump. He was not. He was he's deeply political, and he is like everybody in your international medical bureaucracy. They are interconnected scum. They all have interdependent interests. They never rat anybody out. They are completely corrupt. The international health bureaucracy, starting with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, needs to be bombed. I hope some government somewhere decides when they declare war on the USA to bomb all these institutions. They are rotten through to the core. Gain of function research, everybody does it, no big deal. What was Wuhan doing it for, and how did it get out? That is the main thing. Was it a military gain of function research, which I suspect it was? Or if not, what is the cost that Wuhan bears for allowing it to get out?
Unique One wants to know, Abhijit, what is the legacy of the Maratha Empire?
Legacy in what sense? Economically, they went very good, Militarily, they were wonderful. They did lift a lot of the horrible things that were happening to Hindus under the empires that they, Sultanates and things that they got over. But in terms of economics, they were extremely extractive, did not give impetus to local industry, precisely because they remained extremely extractive. Their warfare was ruinous because they insist on importing horses. People keep saying, "Oh, Abhijit, haven't you heard of the Bhimtali ponies?" Bhimtali ponies formed a very small part of the Marathas' cavalry. They had to keep importing stock at ridiculous prices, so even their fixation on cavalry was a bit much. It was ruinously extractive. There is no sign of economic improvement under the Marathas happening. Quite the contrary, in certain places you see significant economic, well, not decline, but the continuation of similar extractive economic patterns. So, other than the propaganda value today of the Maratha Empire, there were serious issues with the Maratha Empire through and through.
Mr. Lee wants to know, India earned $1 trillion from 2014 to 2019, which is 1/3 of India's current economy. This was under a majority government. Why do you claim that coalition did better than majority governments?
Did we actually add 1 trillion from 2014 to 2019?
I think the numbers do indicate that we went up significantly. But also remember,
yes, but you've maintained the same rate of growth, haven't you?
Actually, more or less the same. It might be a little less, and that is more because
anyway, look, there was a GDP figure adjustment somewhere between that 2014 to 2019.
They picked
things like that.
Yes.
Right. So there's also a big question mark on that figure anyway. But anyway, let's assume that this particular statement is right. Let's not question the statement and assume it's right. Remember, what a government, the previous government does, reflects onto about 2 to 3 years of the next government's term. Okay. So what happened from say 2014 to 2017, you have to give thanks to the UP. You can thank the government for what happened between 2017 onwards at best. Okay, demonetization did not help that. GST has significantly affected what is going to happen, and of course, COVID is not. But as a rule, you look at, I'm not just talking about GST, I'm also talking ease of doing business and things like that. Even by getting things done and things happening, all your indicators, your social development indicators and things like that, indicate it was far better. I would also suggest you look at the MNREGA figures from 2014. I don't know about 2014, but definitely from 2012 to 2017, we saw a significant decline in the in the urban population and a significant increase in the number of people claiming MNREGA, a significant increase in the agricultural population. At some time in 2011 or 2012, which also, by the way, has to be blamed on the previous Congress government. It has to be blamed on UPA 1, I won, yeah. You saw a significant deurbanization happen and a significant increase in the number of the workforce employed in agriculture and things like that. Okay, so as a rule, it has always done better under coalition governments, more or less. I will see on the Modi government from what happens between 2017 onwards, just like you judge Manmohan Singh's government from what happened from what? 2004, 5, 6. Judge them from 2006
those were all
7
Vajpayee.
to 20.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. 2004, 5, 6 were all Vajpayee benefits, right? And even the first 2-3 years of Vajpayee were benefits of the previous government.
Abhijit,
That's generally the way it works.
Why do you think this government refuses to print notes, refuses to aid the demand side of the economy?
I don't know. I don't know who does their economic planning. I honestly don't. There are a lot of things that need to be done that they're not looking at. Demonetization itself. Have you seen any kind of white paper that tells you what was intended to be achieved and what they achieved? You've heard ministers making informal statements, but have you ever had a formal cost-benefit analysis of what they achieved? No. Right. GST again. A lot of the small and micro sectors got shut down because they were like, "मैं tax करूँगा या laddu बेचूँगा," kind of. So it's been a pretty big mess. It's not been optimal. Not that Indian economic policy was ever particularly optimal. Let's be clear about that. But even by the standards that you expected from a majority government, it has been extremely suboptimal.
Abhijit, there's a question from Ashwani Kumar. NCM, I don't know what that name abbreviation is, in Supreme Court, that M's are automatically weaker. How it affects us? Isn't Modi now crossing limits in appeasement? हमें तो अपनों ने मारा, गैरों माई माल कहाँ दम?
What is NCM in Supreme Court that Muslims are automatically weaker? What is NCM?
So you have to come back with a more expanded question. We're going to the next question. Loyal servant of Queen Abhijit Tibet. You are Elizabeth Abhijit Tibet. Your Grace.
Very good chap. Very good chap. First class guy. Ladies, anyone wants to marry this guy, I can highly recommend this guy. He's clearly a match. Marry him right now. And give lots of dowry to him.
Your Grace
gave detailed example of how the Roman Empire
changed to Christianity.
Gave a detailed example of how Roman Empire changed to Christianity. But we are 1,600 years ahead now, and ethnic cleansing itself is not as easy now. Does the example still hold good? Yes, it does. Because ethnic cleansing, what do you think happened between 1947 to 1960 in the Northeast? When did you think most of the Northeast got converted? Okay, what do you think happened during partition? You're still seeing it. I can tell you about a village. Dr. Swami was fighting that case of that village somewhere in central Tamil Nadu, where the Muslims had effectively gherawed and threatened that entire village. Do you remember, Shri? So it happens. It happens a lot. Ghettoization, ethnic cleansing still happen a lot. You don't have to physically kill people, but it still happens a lot. You've seen the demographic change in Tamil Nadu to Christianity. You've seen the demographic change in Andhra to Christianity. You're seeing the demographic change of Sikhs to Christianity in Punjab. Okay, and the thing is, here it is highlighted. In other places, it simply doesn't get highlighted. We still don't know what the tribal conversion rates are in Odisha, for example, in rural Odisha, because they're too rural for us to be doing any kind of statistical research on this. The last census refused to take religion into account. Why? I think it's time. I'm waiting to see if this government has the guts to put the religion thing back in the census when it happens this time around. I doubt it will, but let's see.
Next question, Neha Nagpal again. Do we need stricter environment laws? Faster clearance reduces bureaucracy, but social environment impact assessment is important. How to address crony capitalism and stagnation of salaries in US?
Very diverse questions, no?
Right.
Do you need
Answer the first question.
stricter
Then, yeah.
environmental law? No. Is right now what happens is, because you don't provide economic support to any of your companies, any of your private sector companies, they make do by stealing electricity or not treating sewage and that and putting it out. So not treating the sewage almost becomes part of what they gain from a lack of government support for the private sector. So there's a lot of things. Remember, policy is not monocausal, it is intersectional. You have to rethink the way you support your private sector. You have to do better enforcement, better clarity with the National Green Tribunal and things like that. You can't block things because you don't like them, etc., etc., etc. There's all kinds of things that you can do. But yes, are we in an, for example, fishing? Okay, fishing, which government is going to have the guts to tell our fishermen, stop doing the shit that you people are doing. You're wreaking havoc on the marine ecosystem along the entire Atlantic coast. They do dynamite fishing. You know, about 60 to 70% of the fish that get caught are inedible fish because they're not forced to do nets. Government control over nets on what you can catch, what fish you catch, etc., etc., etc. You don't provide them with refrigeration. So then even the fish that you caught that are edible, you aren't able to preserve. There's a huge amount of wastage out there. The kind of ecocide that has done because of these small-scale fishermen that people love so much. You know, that smiling Kerala face that Shashi Tharoor talks about, having a mobile phone and la-di-da, they're ecologically extremely destructive. Have you done anything? In Europe, they will go check everybody's net. If your net isn't a certain size, which means you're catching a fish below a certain size, there are extraordinary fines. Your ship will be seized. Why don't you come up with a local shipbuilding thing where you say we will build you fiberglass mechanized boats and we'll form your local fisher cooperatives where you all hold shares in it, where you go around fish and we can monitor these boats better. They won't do that. There are many ways of stimulating the economy and eco-friendly which they will not do. They are, however, being pretty good on solar, but they need to make penalties for not installing solar heaters and things like that, especially in states in the north. In Bangalore and Madras, I see a lot of solar water heaters. Up north, you do not see them. So there are things that can still be done, right? But generally, there is no unified policy. It's all fumbling about in the dark. Second is how to address crony capitalism and stagnation of salaries in the US. I don't care about the US really. The US is going through the woke disease. What you're seeing is because of wokery, there is fear. Economies don't grow. Innovation doesn't grow in fear. Innovation grows when there is a lack of fear. So America is essentially setting the root of its own decline. So you are bound to see not just a stagnation, but you will soon decline in salaries. As for crony capitalism, there's nothing wrong with crony capitalism. Taiwan grew because of crony capitalism. Japan grew because of crony capitalism. Germany grew because of crony capitalism. Britain grew because of crony capitalism. There isn't a single capitalist state. There were the robber barons in the United States who essentially grew the United States. There's nothing wrong with crony capitalism. Do it. If it helps you grow, do crony capitalism. Just like you have the Kuznets curve where you reach a certain stage of growth and then environmental imperatives overtake it. There's another curve, I forget which curve, which describes how the level of corruption reduces after a certain point of growth. The point is, are you going to do what Russia did, which is use crony capitalism to destroy your economy rather than build your economy? So it's not a function of crony capitalism, it's a function of how you channel that growth. Accept your weaknesses and grow with your weaknesses. Learn to turn your weaknesses into strength.
Next question from Vivek Menon. Is gradual Chinese annexation of Afghanistan and Pakistan possible?
No, no. You know why? Because Pakistan right now wants Afghanistan as its own exclusive territory because those $3 trillion worth of new age minerals that are reputedly under Afghanistan, Pakistan thinks it can wish away all its economic problems by mining them, and they don't intend the Chinese to intend to let the Chinese profit off them. They want to profit off them. They think they're going to become the next Saudi Arabia, living off like Saudi Arabia lives off oil. They live off $3 trillion worth of new age minerals and be able to solve all this social economic problems.
Next question from Sasdas Bad. Why can't Hindus do mass protests to free temples? Do you feel RSS is more secularized now to work for Hindu causes?
No, the RSS has never changed. It is today what it has always been. They've generally had a very benign view of society. The issue has always been the BJP because there's a big discord between what they promised and their rhetoric and what they have done. And why can't Hindus do a mass protest? I don't know. Why aren't you out on the streets protesting? Start a movement.
Mr. Lee wants to know what factors, historical, anthropological, or policy wise, led to the development of the Gripen jet by Sweden, a small country of 10 million people.
So they've always believed in a certain level of autonomy, number one. Second, they have an extraordinarily developed electronic sector, which had to be given a new project. Number two. Number three, they have very unique requirements. They need lots of small fighters, which are relatively cheap and can be deployed in large, in very significant numbers against what was then the USSR. Russia was the biggest threat to them. That is the framework under which the Gripen was initially developed. It had to be operated from small bases. The F-16 is a maintenance-intensive plane. The Gripen is not. Okay, so to give you an example, a BMW is maintenance nightmare. Just like a Mercedes is a maintenance, all the German cars are maintenance nightmares. Korean cars are not, and they have an extremely high levels of technology in them. So they think of it this way: the Swedes didn't want a German car; they wanted a Korean car, and that is what they developed. It was extremely high quality in great quantity. They wanted a quantity-quality solution, not a quantity-quality binary. And it had to meet certain unique requirements that the Swedes had, like operating off base and able to get serviced by conscripts and things like that.
Next
Plus,
question.
they had the industry to do it. They had the industry, they had the wherewithal to do it, already had the jobs, so they needed to keep giving those people new jobs.
Next question. Chaitanya YSK. Abhijit, did you read Christopher Andrew book on KGB? What other books and sources would you advise on reading about intelligence world?
No, I have not.
Okay. Next question, please.
For the book that you need to be reading, read Ronan Bergman, Rise to Kill.
Okay. Aditya wants to know, how should Indian diplomats use Chinese obsession for Western accreditation as a tactic for better Indo-Sino relationships?
You realize the Indian obsession for Western accreditation is far worse than the Chinese obsession. Do you realize
That's true.
that?
Yeah.
So this is like, asking an Indian diplomat to use the Chinese obsession for Western accreditation is a bit like a beggar tapping on Mukesh Ambani's Rolls Royce one day and saying, "Hey, Mukesh, मेरा investment advice ले रे, तू करोड़पति बनेगा."
Ashwini Kumar wants to know why Choras never tried to conquer the rest of India.
But they did. But they did.
I mean, they went up to
They
East
conquered-
Coast. They did, but
They went all the way up to Bengal. They went all the way up to Bengal. That is where Gangaikonda Chorapuram comes from. They brought waters back from the Ganges to Gangaikonda Chorapuram. But see, they also remember the age we are talking about. This wasn't an age where you controlled territory. This was an age where you extracted rent from a territory. It was a very feudal period of our history, number one. And number two, their maritime business interests were far, far greater. The Tamil Traders Guild at this point of time was extremely powerful to the point it influenced Chora policy. So they preferred doing foreign expeditions to Sri Vijaya. And mind you, I've made this thing before. It was um, Mahmud Ghazni sacked and destroyed the Somnath Jyotirlinga only 2-3 years before Rajendra Chola sets off on the expedition abroad to Sri Vijaya. It never registered with them. They didn't have a concept of being Indians at that point of time. Somnath got destroyed, so what? Even though we consider it Jyotirlinga, clearly it never affected any other king in India. It didn't even affect the who were the other Chalukyas, or I think it was
Pulakesi?
Chalukyas, I forget. It never affected any of them. So no big deal. No, I think Pulakesi was Pallavas, no?
No. Chalukya.
I forget.
Pulakesi defeated the Pallavas. Basically, Pallavas completely got.
Pallavas. Yeah, he was cognate with the Pallavas, not with the Cholas. So I don't know who the other empires were, but it never affected anybody. Nobody cared. When Somnath, the 30,000 pilgrims got slaughtered, and the Somnath Jyotirlinga was broken, nobody batted an eyelid. So they went where their economic interest lay.
Next question from Pranav Naresh. In majority forts, why was the main gate in direct line of sight and not tucked deep in zigzag walls to protect against sieges?
This is because modern fort building never came to India. You come across the earliest examples of the star fort. It happens in the 1400s in Europe, precisely because of the introduction of gunpowder and things like that. So it becomes a imperative there. In India, even guns come very, very late. Siege guns and really good guns come much later. So even by the 1600s, forts in India simply were not star forts. They were direct line of sight forts where you were getting hammered left, right, and center. It shows you how backwards we have become in terms of military technology.
Abhijit, shall we go up to 10:30? That is about 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
Aditya 369. Why doesn't government use help of private sector in public delivery schemes? Is there a system set up to for competition there? Public delivery schemes, PDS.
So public delivery would then be based on L1 things. And L1, like Nandan Nilekani's rotten companies, keep delivering rotten products because they're all based on L1, where data gets compromised. So the good companies don't want to do this L1 crap. It's greasy pole climbers like Nandan Nilekani that want to apply for L1 and then inflate costs later on, or give you a supply product.
Next question from Piku. I have been to several parts of Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Pamir. I was invited to a lot of strangers' homes. They were genuinely interested in me being a Hindustani. Somebody's trying to counter you with some data. What's the question here, Piku?
No, I think this was in response to where in. Can you go back to the question? I want to see it.
Yeah. Go back, please.
You remember this was.
Yeah.
No, back.
Central Asia was the original question. The original question was, how is it that Indians are respected so much in Central Asia? And you said, no, you don't think so. Here is a question.
Yeah.
Again.
No. So there is curiosity. Respect, I don't know about. I've personally only seen it, like you said, in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. I haven't seen it in Tajikistan, I haven't seen it in Turkmenistan, and I haven't seen it in Kazakhstan. There's really nothing much for you to do there if you don't have a direct land bridge to them. There's nothing you can do. And Russia has huge objections with you doing even basic stuff out there because they feel that you're interfering in their backyard.
So, viewers, we have 10 more minutes left, so we will be winding up our show. If we don't answer all your questions, we'll try to answer them in our next show. Here's the next question from
Okay,
Krishna Aital. Abhijit, I love masala dosa and I'm a strict vegetarian. I'm traveling to Madras. According to you, which joint serves the best masala dosa in Madras? Of course, can only be second to those served in Bengaluru.
yes, this is true. They are second to those served in Bengaluru. Bengaluru masala dosa equal you don't get in Tamil Nadu. Sangeeta, go to Sangeeta. Sangeeta is the best according to me.
Sangeeta, where? Adyar?
They're quite the one in what is that hospital? Number CP Ramasamy Road.
CP Ramasamy Road. Is it Arvarpeta? Arvarpet?
Further down from Arvarpet. Where CP Ramasamy Road goes towards Adyar.
Mandavaliya. Mylapore, Mandavali.
Anyway, it's near Boat Club. For the Sangeeta closer to Boat Club.
Wonderful. Next question from Harsh Kumar. Should we set goal on $10,000 per capita rather than a $5-6 trillion economy or 10%
no,
growth?
Harsh. No, Harsh. You don't set the goal at the this thing. First, you need to assess what you are capable of. Okay, how much education can you provide? Right now, there's too much goal setting and not looking at what can you provide. How many people can you provide education to? How many people can you provide quality education to? How many new companies can you create? How much new growth can happen in the private sector? That is what you need. Focus on the how, not on the end goal. Okay? Karamanyavadi karaste mafaleshu kadachana. And isn't it amusing that somebody called Karma Yogi doesn't even know that basic? He doesn't even know what it means.
Bharati in Bharatam wants to know, how do we get Supreme Court to take up the case that's pending on releasing our temples from the clutches of the government? Why is Supreme Court not taking this up on priority? It's in indirect support of cultural genocide.
Of course it is. You think Modi wants to give up control of temples? They all get so much money from those temples. You remember Vishnu Hari Dalmia of the VHP? He very accurately accused Modi of destroying more Hindu temples than Ghori and Ghazni combined, which is true. In the Ahmedabad tree cleaning drive or whatever it was across Gujarat, they probably demolished more temples than Ghori and Ghazni combined. Why does this surprise you? These big temples are cash cows for state, boss. No government is going to get rid of it. If Hindus are going to die off because of it in 30 years, they don't care.
Yeah, I think you have to think about the mindset.
And look, I think Hindus are getting exactly what they deserve. If you want to live in this kind of frog in a heating pond thing, where you don't know when you're being boiled alive, and you want to work for government policies like this, be my guest, do it. They don't come 30 years down the line and say, oh, we've become a Muslim majority country or a Christian majority, simple majority of Christians, simple majority of Muslims, absolute majority of minorities, and now they're persecuting us. You're going to get exactly what you deserve.
Next question from Gyan Abhinesh. I'm still unable to understand what is this deal between communists and Muslims. I recently heard that women aren't reporting rapes because the rapist is a Muslim. Where is liberal brainwashing, talking young minds? Boy, what is this? One long word.
It's a very good question because this happened on Twitter. There was this woman who said that she'd been molested by a Muslim guy, but she never reported it because he was Muslim. So this is where intersectionality and the victimhood complex. Communists take divide and rule in that they try to identify several victim groups. There isn't a single community that a communist hasn't tried to create a victim complex in and then exploit their support from. This happened in the Soviet Union. This happened in China. And once they come to power, they crack down on those minorities. Okay, so I suspect if the communists come to power, the first thing they'll do is institute a whole load of Muslims in order to homogenize the country. That's exactly what they did in China. That's exactly what they did in Russia. They've done this to all minority religions, and no matter which country communists have taken over. So they'll do that here. But till then, they will always form an alliance of convenience because one wants to see itself as victims. The other's politics depends on people seeing themselves as victims.
Next question, please. Aditya 369 again. When you say Western education, even that is constantly evolving and diverse, why do we use the same old concept of quantity over quality approach?
Because you are a quantity country. Your educational problems are quantity problems. You first have to solve quantity. In order to have the quality segregation, you either need to accept a Chinese model, which is, regional apartheid. The East Coast will grow first, and then we'll slowly transfer the wealth west. Or you need to accept a class stratified society, which could be like real apartheid in South Africa. Are you willing to do that? You can't. This is what happens when you create representation before institutions. So that is what you get. So you have to provide the same quantity to everybody. You can't have quality.
Next question, please. Mr. Lee, what higher education options are good for students in 2021 who want to avoid math? Is avoiding maths a good ploy in this era of machine learning, AI, data science, quantum computing?
Unless you want to become a cyber coolie, you're quite okay avoiding math. Okay, humanities have found that most of the math that is used is actually complete codswallop. You need to know statistics quite a bit, but most of the modeling and shit that happens in economics and things like that is absolute codswallop. I've actually sat down with several, I'm not going to name them, but you can find pictures of me on my Twitter timeline if you're smart enough to know who they are. They're in the background. They never wanted to be named. Several economics Nobel laureates, they'll happily admit to you we're way behind in using mathematics and sciences today, and we use mathematics to concoct whatever we want. So there's actually a very good future for people who don't want to do maths either. No problem. Remember, the humanity has generally been controlled by humanity's non-STEM dunces. Non-STEM dunces see, a STEM smarty knows how to harness nature. A humanity jackass knows how to harness you. So the humanity jackass is always king. So he may be a jackass, but he's smarter than you because he knows how to control you.
Next question, please. Vipin Kumar, since you both seem to have traveled a lot, what is a personality type of a Japanese, Chinese?
I don't know these. I don't do all these personality types. There's no personality type as such, alpha, beta, I personality test. Generally, go back to the previous question, please.
Yeah, go back to the previous question, please.
Personality type.
Yeah, personality type. Yeah. Well, they were asking about, Japanese, okay. Chinese,
so
Russian.
Japanese. Yeah, I read it. 1 second. Japanese, extremely industrious and working. I never worked so consistently with people who are so industrious, very honest, extremely honest, and hardworking. Chinese, again, extremely industrious but extremely crooked. I have never come across ruder people than the Chinese, but again, extremely hardworking. You can't fault their work. They may screw you over, but they won't do kaam chori. They won't scrounge in their work. Okay. Russian, fatalistic, extremely fatalistic. I don't know what it is. It's just a very gloomy. It's both brash and gloomy. In your face, brash and gloomy. German rules. rules, rules, rules. It's almost suffocating being in Germany because there's such a stickler for rules. It's just irritating. French, there's no national type. It's extremely varied. I've never come across a stereotype. Same with the English. I've never come across a stereotype, and Americans as well. No stereotypes. These other countries, though, the Japanese, Chinese, Russians, and Germans, there is something called a national character with them. With the French, the English, and the Americans, I have not seen a national character with them.
Next question, and that's the last one. Next question, please. Anirudh Sarangan. Hi, Abhijit. Are Pallavas descendants of Pahlavas? I think this is Persian.
Persian. Yeah, Pahlavi. Yeah, no, we don't really know. They could have been, but we don't really know. Okay, we don't really know for several reasons. There is a speculation that they are. We still don't have any Pallava bones to do a DNA analysis of, because obviously they were all burnt, cremated. So we'll never possibly know. The speculation is just from the name and the basis of how the hats are. The conical hats which come from Sassanid and Arsacid and Achaemenid style hats. We're never realistically going to know the answer to that.
With that, our today's Ask Abhijit program comes to an end. Thanks as always, Abhijit. And we'll be back again next Monday with your questions and our answers. Namaskar.
Veil, veil, vetri, veil.
Veil, veil, vetri, veil.